Yes, Chair. Okay.
Afternoon,
We can
everyone.
Can we start now? If the Minister and HOD are in, I would like us to start the meeting, honorable members. Once again, let me make use of the opportunity to welcome everybody that has come to be part of this meeting. This is the meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts of the Provincial Legislature of the Western Cape, or the Provincial Parliament of the Western Cape, and is for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Education of the Western Cape. We have finished the first part of the meeting where we were being briefed by the Audit Committee and the Auditor General about the report of the department. We are now going to the second part of the meeting, which is the actual report, and together with the Auditor General's report, and will specifically be dealing with Section C and Section E of the annual report of the Department of Education in the Western Cape. The meeting is an open meeting, which is open to the public. In other words, it has been advertised as such in various newspapers in 3 languages, which is it was advertised in the Burger for Afrikaans, it was advertised in the Argus for English, and also advertised in Vukani newspaper for isiXhosa. When we finish with the annual report as members of the provincial legislature, we will allow those members of the public who have attended and will also indicate that they would like to ask question to ask question. And thereafter we will excuse everybody so that the committee itself can continue with the business of its meeting. Now, what I will do then is that I will allow the Honorable Minister if he's got some opening remarks or some statement that would like to make those statements, and thereafter I will allow the HOD, after which I will allow honorable members who would like to ask questions to ask questions. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon, members of the committee and SG and our team over there. I don't really want to say too much other than that I think we all know with the difficulty we had last year with COVID, it was had a huge impact on all of us. My department had to carry on doing business, our concert as usual, because it was anything but usual. But in addition to what we normally have to do every year for our schools and for the department as such, we also had to then step into action very quickly to ensure that we procured items very quickly to ensure that our learners could get back to school as soon as possible and our teachers could be there as safely as possible. So when you've got 1.1 million roundabouts children that you have to procure masks and sanitizers and so on for, it takes a lot of work and quite exceptional performance trying to get all that organized in time. And I think that my department deserves really to be commended for the work that they did during that time as far as that is concerned, and having still managed to maintain an unqualified audit, which I think for any education department in the world, in fact, is a huge achievement. So I think we must just also bear that in mind when you interrogate us on issues, the scale at which we operate, the number of things that have to be done in the department, and especially under the circumstances in which they were done last year. So I think that's all for now, Chairperson. I'm very happy that we've maintained a qualified audit. Obviously, we don't want findings, but one thing that does concern me a lot is the huge amount of time that is taken up by our officials having to engage with the Auditor General. We accept their important role in ensuring money is spent appropriately. But when it's something about 8 months of the year engaging with the AG, I think we need to start asking a few questions. Other than that, that's it for now. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. HOD.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good to see you again, and good afternoon to everybody. Members, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. So just to follow up on some of the Minister's comments that the Minister had made, I think that one of the things with education is that we underestimate how volume changes the system. And the system is very large. As Minister mentioned, it's got more than 1.1 million learners in 1,500 schools. It's got 43,000 staff, of which 40,000 are actually based at schools. It's quite a large system. And I think the other issue with education that is perhaps different from other sectors is that because every child, as most children, have parents, and parents have a role inside a structure called the school governing bodies. We also have a very active trade union movement. We also have a very active principal associations, 3 or 4 of them. I think what this means is that education is everyone's business. And I think it therefore means that the scrutiny that we are placed under as a department is intense. And I think we just must keep an eye on that board always to say that this is a department that's always in the public domain. But the second thing is a department that has lots of volume. And volume is something that can show systems. Minister has already alluded to the fact that the COVID-19 had on the department. Between all the lockdowns, the confusing directions, the fact that we had to get our children back, the fact that very quickly we had to organize sanitizer, masks, and all the other things that went with COVID-19. I think it is actually miraculous that in the end we did actually get back. And that in the end, there was schooling for that year, for the year under review. Although, as we know, only grade 12s went back for most of the year. Others all went back on a rotational basis. I think that would have had something back. But having said that, Chairperson, the department achieved just under 70% of its performance indicators, and it spent 97.7% of the budget in the year under review. And I think just if we take it into account the size of the system, the conditions pertaining during 2020 into 2021, I think that really from the department side, I think that's something that they did the best that they could do under the circumstances. So with those few words, Chairperson, we present ourselves here to Scopa, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, HOD. I will now, honorable members, allow you, if you've got any question that you'd like to ask from the annual report of the department. We are going to first start with section C of the annual report of the department. In section C, start from page 143 until 165. Can I get an indication of those members who would like to ask questions? Honorable Porter. Honorable Ngonzo. Can you continue in that order?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. On page 151, in regard to criminal offences, I just want to ask the SG, in regard to those number of cases that are closed or that has been closed, if the SG could speak to the sanctions around those closed cases and what was the actual content of those cases. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Ngonzo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. On page 152, on 7.2 under governance, can we be shared the detail of what exactly are these issues that are said to be monitored, that needs to be monitored in those 4 programs, and if as Scopa we can be finished with the report of those. That's the first one, Chair. And then on page 157, on the health and safety, I just want to understand if the department does have a health and safety unit, and if so, how is it composed? When last did it report, and the spend in this particular financial year, considering Minister was referring to the plus 1 million learners that they have to deal with in protection from COVID, and spending in that regard. Is if there is internally, in particular within the department, over and above the schools that they have to take care of. That's another one, Chair. And then in page 1, I think it's 159, if I'm not mistaken, Chair. Actually, it's in section 10 on the triple BE. I just want to understand the department, I think on criteria number 2, under those criterias indicates there that their answer is yes around the compliance on triple BE. It's on page 165, sorry, Chair. They indicate implementing a preferential procurement policy. And I think we were in the odd ages report that there is an observation around local content deviation or non-compliance by the department. So how do we reconcile the two when the department in its report says it is fully compliant? I will stop there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Said.
Thank you very much, Chair, and my greetings to the Minister and to the department colleagues. Chair, my first question is based on page 150, the conclusion, the third sentence, which speaks about having reviewed the strategic risks on a continuous basis, allowed management to mitigate certain risks, however not completed. I just wanted to get a sense from the department as to which are these strategic risks that were reviewed and which ones were mitigated and why was this not completed. And also, is the issue of unplaced learners, and as they spoke about possibly in the morning session, not knowing, matters about the population increase in the province, is that considered to be a strategic risk? I just wanted to get a sense. That's on 150. Then 153, the finding on the internal control deficiencies. There's a point there that which was made by the Auditor General, that management did not have appropriate record-keeping processes in place. Now, I remember, Chair, this basically pops up every year. These are the same findings that were made in the previous years. I just wanted to get a sense as to what's the challenge in having this particular finding addressed. Just wanted to know that. I'm covered by Member Nkondlo on the triple BEE compliance, but linked to that, and possibly that, is there any rationale, and I'm not saying that the company that got, I think, just over 90% of the COVID-19 work was not BEE compliant, but I just wanted to get a sense as to what is the rationale behind one company getting most of the work. Thank you.
Just your last question, Honorable Said, which page is it?
That is related to page 165, but it's not directly related to it as well. It's tied to the report overall, to 149 actually. In fact, if you look at 149, So it's a combination between 149 and one.
You are saying the company itself got more than 90% of COVID-19 related procurements.
Yes, that's on page 149. If you look at bullet point 1 to the second sentence, the first to the second sentence on page 149. Thank you, Chair. One supplier.
Oh, thank you very much. Let's go for the first round then of questions. Can we have answers to those from the department?
You need to try and share the responses to the answers. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to try and share the responses to the answers. Mr. Gila will take the bulk of the answers, and we will follow up because there were questions on the cases. They want the content of the cases, then on health and safety, then on double B, then local content. And there's questions on the risk management and unplaced learners, whether it is a strategic risk for the department. And then there's the question of the one supplier seems to have got many of the contracts of the department in relation to a response to COVID-19. I'm going to ask Mr. Ila to kick off, and then we'll supplement Chairperson if required. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. In terms of the questions that was posed by Ms. Botha around the sanction, just to say that all of these cases relate to findings by PFS, Provincial Forensic Services, at school level. There were various matters that was found there. There is the issue around non-compliance to ECM or supply chain management at school level, where officials did not adhere to the guidelines as we give it to them in terms of the basic financial manual. And then there were also other internal control deficiencies, where either the school didn't have a policy on certain aspects, or they didn't comply with certain aspects around internal control methods in terms of not keeping adequate records of things, or didn't have the required sign off in that regard. As you know, at school level, the SGB is mainly responsible for the financial function of the school. They have a finance committee, and then also in terms of Section 16, school principals also have a role to play as well. So the sanctions takes the form of various forms in that regard. The one, as you indicated there, it got to do with criminal cases where forensic services have found that people were stealing money, defrauding the school of funds. But that's one thing, and they report that straight to police. What we do with them is we follow through them. We follow up with the police around the progress around those particular cases as well. Then, as far as other things are concerned, where there are possibly disciplinary hearings that we have to do, that go through regulations, and that we do on a quarterly basis, and we give feedback to the PFS through that in terms of progress there. And then there are matters where we have to either strengthen internal control deficiencies at school level, and that the district office do with the school corporate officer, where they have to go to schools in that regard as well. I think just to echo what the SG said, during this year, we had issues about districts having to visit schools due to social distancing and health and safety issues. So not everything could have been dealt with as they're supposed to, but I think where we could affect those recommendations, there was an attempt to deal with those particular cases. Then on page 152, the member has asked for details of those reports. I think we can provide that detail as requested by the member in terms of those reports as well. But I must just qualify to say that these internal audit reports are areas that the department has asked internal audit to to inspect, if we call it that, or interrogate, in our control. So it's initiated by the department, and it's there to strengthen our internal control environment to see how we can better deal with some of our particular areas that we identified as an area as well. Then, in terms of page 157, remember our request whether we have a health and safety unit. If I can just say that we don't have health and safety unit per se, but we do have a unit that drives health and safety in the department, also together with schools where they're supposed to have safety committees, and that's how we drive that. Then, as far as taking care of that through the COVID pandemic, we spent about 452 million rand on the procuring of PPEs, as indicated in our annual report, to take care of those health and safety issues during the COVID period at head office, districts, and at school level as well. So we supplied all the schools with hand sanitizers, there's mask and disinfectant, and I think schools would have, I'm not sure if you've seen pictures of that, but we've supplied in the course of last year, up till November, we have supplied schools with those particular aspects as required. We've also indicated to schools that they can use the normal standards funding to supplement whatever. We have just recently, we have requested schools to indicate to us whether they require further assistance, and the supplier has delivered some of those requests already to some of the schools. We've had even a further request to that regard as well, and we will respond to that particular aspect as well. But yes, we are responding to schools' requests around particular PPEs and the top-ups around that as well, because we recognize the fact that the pandemic is not over yet, and we are facing the health and safety aspects of learners and teachers in that regard we have to take care of as the first and foremost priority. Then, as far as the BE equipment is concerned, on page 165, this is say that we comply with those aspects. Just to say that we have a DCM unit that gets audited by the Auditor General, in some cases also by internal audit, but in most cases by the AG, and then we also have Provincial Treasury doing their virtual assessment annually that makes sure that the department complies with these particular measures. Because as you know, BE is not just for us a kind of a statement, but we have legislation that we have to comply with. And if we don't comply with that, then you are non-compliant, and it can also be reported as irregular expenditure as well. So that particular statement is based on fact, and it's based on our compliance record in that regard as well. Because otherwise we can't award those tenders, and we can find ourselves sometimes in a legal or litigation matter if we do not comply with some of these things in case suppliers challenge in that regard as well. Then, as far as strategic risks are concerned, I think we've tried to, we've tried to highlight those particular risks as far as strategic risks are concerned. If I can just touch on the issues there as far as the strategic risks are concerned. So we go to a particular page 157, I think, is what the member has asked about. But basically, the strategic risk that the department faces is around budgets. That's the one issue that we face, that we've indicated as well. I'm just trying to get to those matters.
150.
150. This 150.
If I go at the top, that's the member requested.
Okay. Yeah. But one of those strategic risks is budget management, in terms of resource allocation to the department, because that's an indication of whether the department can meet its mandate or not. Then what we are saying in regard that we can't mitigate it completely, what we mean by that is, given the limited funding we receive, and also in some cases we are not fully in control of that risk, because we are for the resource envelope that we get from Provincial Treasury, we are not a revenue generating organization. You know, we don't sell things, so we can't generate revenue like, say, any other entity. But we are mainly dependent on equitable share for our particular operation, which means we are dependent on the equitable share of the province and then also conditional grants. That means we have to operate within that particular limited framework and envelope, and therefore, I think the member was asking about the placement. That links into that particular aspect that we, in this morning session, we indicated that, you know, additional learners do not come with the concomitant funding, and that presents a challenge to the department. For example, as I indicated this morning, that our infrastructure budget is 1.8 million rand. However, if there are more learners coming into the province, then this department has to prioritize whether we're going to build new schools or whether we're going to do maintenance, and therefore, as a result, we have to shift funding away from those other priorities to buy more mobiles or to provide access for those learners, and that's a choice the department has to make. So what the result is that we can't mitigate the risk completely in terms of the resource allocation. Then, the other question was around appropriate record keeping. Ladies and gentlemen, my HOD started this year, and one of his commitments is try to reduce the admin burden on schools. So a lot of these record keeping challenges we face is at school level, where we try to either let them record their textbooks issue, which is in the report, around whether every parent or every learner has received a textbook and the parents have signed for that, or whether the retrieval system is working adequately, and so forth. So we do have a challenge in our system that our schools are at various levels of maturity around financial management, and we try as far as possible try to assist them. However, there is about 1,500 sites out there or schools, and to try and manage them on a daily basis is a challenge for us, for our district officers. And then also we have staff turnover. We have governing bodies that comes in every 3 years, and that results for us to have to retrain them every time. So that's got particular challenges for us as far as appropriate record keeping is concerned. We do impress on schools to try and maintain it as far as possible. However, when the AG visits some of our schools, I think members can understand it's a challenge for some of our schools when they have to interact with the Auditor General for the first time, because we have to guide those schools in that regard, how to respond to the AG and what information they require. So yes, we have some challenges in that regard, but again, that's at particular school level where most of our challenges are lying around appropriate record keeping. Then the last question Mr. Saif asked about the one supplier. Yes, we had to respond to various stakeholders around this particular question. Because as we know, Provincial Treasury published the report on the COVID procurement. So just to say that in a short, and I have just shortly to respond to that particular question, this department already had a contract in place with a service provider that deals with the supply of disinfectants, sanitizers, and so forth to schools. We had that already in place. It's a general contract we have in place to supply schools with their cleaning materials. And so when COVID came along, in terms of law, we can't go anywhere else because we already have an existing contract. So then as far as that is concerned, we had to go to the current supplier and say, look, are you in a position to supply the stuff of volume? And that company responded to us and said that they can supply it to us with their suppliers, and then they came to the fore to supply us with those particular products. Yes, on the face of it, it looks like it's a one-sided affair. But again, there needs to be understanding that this department had pre-COVID had existing contract in place that deals with most of the PPE requirements around this particular aspect. And they were able to deliver on those particular products. Schools received all of them. I think the agency community inspections in those schools last year, and we've seen us photos of how things were packed and how schools received those particular PPE product inventories. So yeah, we did manage to get the supplier to deliver all of those products up to the end of November last year. Yeah, let me stop there and I'll ask my HDD wants to add to that. Thank you.
So I think just the only other thing to say, just from an operational basis, clearly the risk of unplaced learners, you have actually indicated that. We did indicate this morning in the session that we had with the committee this morning that essentially there are many reasons in relation to question of learners and the fact that there are a small cohort of schools that essentially everybody is trying to get into. And in this morning session, I mentioned the case of Pine Road. So I said Pine Road School in Mitchellplain, 200 places, 1,200 applications. Now, there's a small cohort of schools where the same thing happens, and the dilemma that we have is parents obviously want the best for their children, so they will obviously apply to what they consider to be the top schools, and therefore these schools become oversubscribed. And then it comes into the situation where the department has to start to negotiate with parents to accept second options. So that's the process that we're in right now. Other point that I also mentioned, Chairperson, is that there is some movement of parents across the province. And then you see therefore that we aren't able to actually take the place that the child occupies with them because it's physically in one space. And I think the third is also that even though the department has tried to institute the discipline of people applying on time, of all places to allow us to give time for this to happen. We did have I think a closing date of 20th of June, my department can correct me if I'm incorrect, but 20th of June, for example, for next year, you still find people coming now, still applying. And we will find also that there will be people who arrive on the first day of next year. We have not had any contact with anybody inside this department who will then come for a place, and the problem that we have right now is we don't know exactly where they will arrive. So I think those are some of the risks that we face, but we have the commitment, Chairperson, we're responsible for basic education, and therefore we must provide a place for children and offer to parents, and that is what we will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, are there any follow-up questions you would like to make? Honorable Ngondo?
No, Chair, it's not a follow-up. I thought you had already moved to the next section.
Your line, Honorable Ngondo, are you still on the floor?
Apologies, Chair. I was saying I thought you had moved to the next section, so I don't have a follow-up.
I'll be moving there now. I'll be moving there now. If there are no further questions, then on section C, honorable members, can we then move to section E of the annual report? And section E start on page 209 on the electronic copy I am using. Can I get an okay, honorable members? Can I get an of members who would like to ask questions? Honorable Nkondlo, Honorable Said.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, Honorable.
Oh, thank you, Chairperson. I think, Chair, can I start with what we also engage the AG and the internal audit now that the department, the minister and the SG are here. One, the Auditor General in its report has then concluded that the leadership did not exercise oversight responsibility regarding financial and performance reporting and compliance, and citing, I think, the issue of the PDOs and the internal controls, which is a repeat even for the last financial year. So I would like to get both from the minister and also the SG's response on this, which has been raised by the Auditor General. What seems to be the problem of the department to fix its internal controls, also to ensure that there is reliable and verifiable information in as far as there are predetermined objectives. And I think to the minister, by when should we be seeing a clean audit, given that the last financial year this department had ever had a clean audit was in 2017-18. Is this a matter that the department is engaging on how to get themselves green like other departments? So that's the first one that I wanted to just get clarity on, Chair. Then further than that, Chair, I think I would love to have, I think I've got some general questions which links to some pages which the department can clarify. I will indicate those pages, and then some specifics. One, maybe the department can just indicate to me what are the payments that goes to the non-profit institutions as it relates to the different programs, and particularly where there's been quite a more than 100% increase from the last financial year. Like if one refers to page 26 on the public secondary school level, a program as an example. So I just want to check that, maybe just to clarify for me, who are the non-profit, what do you mean by non-profit institution transfer, to whom are those transfers done to, and what would have spiked in this current environment such a budget increase? That's the first one, Chair. And then secondly, Chair, in as far as I think it's on page 237, and I think read with 240 under program 7. Once again, if one looks at that particular program on special projects, I'm interested to know what exactly were these special projects that were planned when one looks at the budgeting thereof, because once again, this is more than a 200% jump from the previous budget. So perhaps there is a particular context why the actual main appropriation for this particular budget, if you look from the previous financial year, would have actually gone so much up, but still you would see that the actual expenditure even on this particular program could not necessarily be 100% of that particular budget. What has happened in this regard, in as far as the special projects are concerned? Then another one, Chair, is on page 242 to 244. I see there, in as far as the independent schools, that there's a dispute on salary levels, there are delays on procurement, and I'm trying to understand by when is this dispute, has it been sorted with the national department in terms of the salary levels as it relates there in page 242? Or will this matter be resolved for the new financial year? And again, which are these independent schools that have been affected, and the extent of the delays to those suppliers, because I see that the suppliers of, I think, some of the nutrition program that I'm not sure, perhaps that could be clarified. Does it mean that there were payments that were not made during the time that they needed to be made? And if so, what was the delay in terms of days, or that delay can be explained, and what is its impact to the suppliers now, as I see that actually that amount has also been requested for it actually to be moved to the new financial years. And my last one, Chair, is that I see, I think it is around page 238. If once again, 238 to 239, if an explanation in particular on these particular items, and I look at them without being a member of that particular standing committee to understand context. So if it can be explained, because I see particular budget items, once again, that have actually shot up in terms of their spend from the previous financial year. And once again, if one looks at it here, it's your goods and services, your computer budget, other suppliers, agencies, contractors. If maybe such an explanation of what would have been these sort of demands in this particular financial year that have made more than 200% jump in spending from the previous financial year to the current reporting year in terms of the items that needed to be sourced or payments that needed to be made. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngondlo. Honorable Said.
No, Chair, I'm fully covered by Honorable Nkondlo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I probably going to have a second bite later, but my question to start off with revolve around the predetermined audit findings in terms of the reporting. Now, I'd like to know whether the department, in terms of their own reporting and the 87% reach that they have stated, are they satisfied that the accuracy or the 80%, 87% as contained in their sort of reporting is a reasonable percentage in terms of complying with or reaching those particular students? And secondly, Chair, I think that one has a great deal of sympathy for the department in terms of its enormity and the reach that they need to access in terms of providing resources and quality education to our children in the Western Cape. And if one look at the PDOs of the previous financial year, one cannot but sort of neglect to acknowledge the improvement that has occurred in terms of complying with the AG's previous audit report. And I think, well, you know, I don't know whether, you know, a clean audit is obviously the ultimate that we need to strive for, but in terms of this particular audit or this particular financial year under review, I think that the findings is only one compared to previous financial year, and one need to recognize that. Chair, I'm going to stop there now because I have other questions I would like to pose later, and then I'll pose them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable America. Can we hand over to the department?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We will, between Mr. Eli and myself, we will try and answer these questions, and then I think others will come. But maybe I can just speak about this question of PDOs. Thank you to Mr. America. He mentioned there that we have fewer findings than last year on PDOs. However, the finding that we did get on the one PDO, it wasn't enough for the AG to not to make a finding, put it that way. Just in relation to the textbooks now, I think one of the questions that has been asked in relation to that is, I think as Mr. Kondo asked, what is the department doing to fix the situation? What we have actually done in the current financial year, Chairperson, is to look at all our PDOs, to look at the standard operating procedures that we have put in place for those PDOs, and specifically this particular one, and then to look at whether we can't simplify some of these to make sure that we can actually have the levels of control that we require. I do not want to get into the detail of the specific PDO, but I think the specific one was in relation to textbooks and in the standard operating procedures. For example, one of the things we would have said is that we needed to indicate that parents needed to actually indicate that they had received certain textbooks. Now, clearly we could not provide, I guess, at the level that the AG was comfortable with, so we accept that finding. But of course, then we have to go back and question ourselves as a department in relation to that PDO. Is that a realistic kind of standard operating procedure that we're engaged in, and we're on a drive in this year to currently review all of these to make sure that we can correct. The bottom line is that children do need to receive textbooks, and they have, but in terms of the the standard operating procedures that we set down, we didn't fully comply with what we have put down, which is essentially our own rule book. So that is being fixed, Chairperson. I just wanted to say that. I think the second thing that I wanted to mention is that when we start talking about non-profits, this would be funding that we give to schools. So in accounting measures, they call them non-profits, but essentially it's schools, through the school structures, and funding is given there. Now, when we look at some of these increases that have been mentioned, and Mr. Eli can speak more to the detail, but some of the increases that have been mentioned, they go about the fact that towards the end of last year, we had to engage in the Presidential Employment Initiative Program, which I'm sure everybody on the line is aware of, where we basically then had opportunities to present young people specifically. I think they had to be under 35. We had to look at whether we could create employment opportunities for them, and I speak under correction, but I think we created 19,000. Ms. Faulkner, can you just correct me? Is it 19,000 opportunities? Yes, 19,000 opportunities, and that came at the end of the financial year, towards the end. I think in the December, January, February period. And so therefore, that would not have been money that we would have had in our own expenditure in the previous year. So when you compare it, I think that explains some of the upticks in relation to some of the expenditure in that regard. But I think I'll pause there. I'll ask Mr. Eli perhaps to maybe just talk to some of the detail. Thank you, Mr. Eli.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that in terms of the presidential initiative, the unexpected part of the committee was to do with to save STB posts. That was quite a big part of that allocation. However, what we found is that schools didn't have the uptake that we were anticipating from schools to save STB posts, because I think in some cases, I think the teachers already left, those particular teachers for SGBs already left, and therefore when we intervened in that particular case, which was actually towards the end of the current school year, they couldn't save those posts, but the uptake there wasn't what we anticipated, so we had particular savings in that regard. However, around the unexpenditure, we are engaging with Provincial Treasury around the future, perhaps, utilization of those particular funding, because what came up allocation, and therefore it came with certain conditions, and we couldn't use it for anything else as well. Then, as far as the President 244, the member asked on page 244, the disputes that we had there yes, we had a dispute around salary levels with Department of Basic Education. Just to give a bit of background around that, this department started off with a court case in that regard, which we had to resolve, and then later on, the National Education Department or the Department of Basic Education was also quoted in the court case, and then they had to come with a particular motivation to the court, and then they created what is now called this particular grant, the Learners with Profound Intellectual Disability Grant. That's what the member was referring to, and that's a DBE grant. It's got certain conditions, and in terms of that particular grant, there are certain salary levels that they prescribe to us. But again, as I said, we've already started with this program a couple of years before that, and we've employed people that you guys on contract at particular salary levels, and therefore we were trying to resolve that with DBE. That matter has now been dealt with as well. Then, and as far as the other aspect is concerned around the learner training and support materials and or the toolkits, which we refer to as a rollover request. Just to say that a rollover is there's a legal obligation that exists in terms of that particular aspect, which means we have to provide proof to the AG and to Provincial Treasury to say we have an actual legal commitment. So it was either delivered, it wasn't paid at year end, or we placed an order, but it wasn't delivered yet. So that is what gives you, that's the requirements around a rollover. So it means that the funding won't don't go astray, and we have probably spent money already in the new financial year as well, given the fact it's a rollover, while we wait for Provincial Treasury to give us an indication whether that is going to be approved or not. Then, in terms of the member was asking where there's increases in budget, I think that I must just paint a picture for the members in terms of what happened during this particular financial year. We had 2 months of hard lockdown. Then we had to procure PPEs to the period of about 450 million rand. And within that, Provincial Treasury was talking about budget cuts, and we had to reprioritize some of the funding out of infrastructure and also from our own savings, because one of the things that Provincial Treasury indicated to us that the department must also effect its own savings, because the economy was taken a knock because of lockdown. And I think we all know the unemployment that increased in this country. So, but again, as education, we also had to effect other services that came to the fore. So, in terms of the hard lockdown, when the learners went back from the 1st of June return to school, we had to respond in that regard as well, especially around our poor school, because not everybody could go online and get resources online. So in some regards, those learners could go online. We spend money on e-learning around the e-portal and those particular initiatives to support learning online, which means those are money that we didn't budget for, but we had to shift money to accommodate those particular requirements. In some cases, we didn't have, for poor learners, we had to provide print material, so we basically come and sit at school level, and then we had to shift money or provide money, and therefore you'll find in some of us, in some particular programs, you'll find shifting funds, because as a department, we had to respond to the pandemic, but we also had to keep delivering the service. As you know, our schools are currently on what they call a TRIPS, a temporary revised education plan, where learners come alternative days, and so for those learners that can't come, we had to provide additional resources in terms of that particular operational matter as well. Then the one member asked about the own reporting and the accuracy around that. Just to say that, again, as I indicated, we've got 1,500 schools out there from a management perspective, to patrol all 1,500 schools, and let's just say you've got 40 classrooms that you have in those schools. The span of control and the systems you need to have in place to track all of that is quite enormous. So the department has done spot checks, we've done follow-up through districts, And in particular cases, it was fine. In some cases, we had to rectify some things as well. However, in some of our schools, we didn't find exactly the same thing. And that's when the AG went in there and said, look, we've drawn a sample of some of our schools, and we're not exactly finding what we're looking for, either in terms of your own circulars you issued, or your own controls you put in place at schools that they had to have in place. Some of those controls were not there. So as it is indicated, where we find a school that say that they issued textbooks, in some cases we didn't find that the parents signed for the textbook. So we're supposed to have a register where the parents are supposed to sign for the textbooks. In some cases, the parents didn't sign for the textbooks. And so the Auditor General find that to be incomplete. In some cases, the teachers signed for those as well, which was not allowed in terms of the circular as well. So I think it is difficult. We report that that particular percentage based on the feedback we receive from schools and also in terms of our own monitoring. But again, the span of control is quite wide, and therefore, that's where the AG comes in to try and then deal with the issue around checking the accuracy and also checking the supporting documentation that goes together with that. And there are gaps, unfortunately there's gaps in that regard as far as those aspects are concerned. However, we do have a plan in place to try and improve those particular things as well. So as the issue said, we will revise the software in that regard to try and make it easier for schools to comply with. We will ask the district officers to inspect schools on a regular basis when they do go to schools, just to make sure that the schools are adhering to those particular aspects in terms of compliance. However, we are looking at possibly trying to remove the item from our annual performance plan or APP to try to consolidate the operations and the controls around that. Because in some of our schools, obviously there's a challenge for them in terms of administration to try and deal with all these particular administration requirements that we put on them. So there is that. I think the issue will respond to the aspect around the clean audit. I think that for all the departments avoid a clean audit. However, I must also say that the requirements around PDOs is something that DBE and the sector is having challenges with. There's certain allowances made, and then there's certain negotiations between DBE and National Treasury around the indicators. And the challenge there is to have a necessary system in place that can support the reporting requirements. I must say that our schools is a challenge for us, and we have what we call a Central Education Management Information System, where schools do report the information on. We extract the data and information from there so that we can see exactly what is going on there, but those aspects need interrogation in terms of the actual supporting documentation, and that requires quite extensive work and effort. But again, I think to try to get to a clean audit, there are costs involved, but there's also priority that we have to give attention to. I think the issue around learning losses is something that we're giving high priority to at the moment, to try and deal with that. As you know, our learners are coming onto the days, and there are some aspects that requires our attention at this particular point in time. But I think my HG can talk to those particular things as well as far as effort is concerned, because all these things require effort. And then there's only so much we can do. But again, I think that the clean audit is something which we will strive towards. When we can achieve that, I think in the current pandemic, I think it's going to be quite a big challenge for us. But again, Chair, I think maybe members have noticed that as far as the financial accounting part is concerned, I think we're driving that quite hard to improve in that regard, to try and remove the non-compliance as far as possible is concerned. But I'll hand over to my HG. Thank you.
Chairperson, so essentially, I think what we're engaging in as a department for the next round is to look specifically from a pragmatic point of view. What have we actually put out in relation to our PDOs, what procedures have we put out, how are we dealing with internal control reports and our responses to them, how are we dealing with very many findings that we have had or many things. So it's just an energy that we have in our team now to try and see whether we, to be able to get to a point where we actually can respond to many things and not find out about it on audit. I think that's where we are at this point. That's the kind of culture we're driving now inside the department. And yes, we see whether we stand here next year, Chairperson, and the same findings. Hopefully not. Hopefully we'll improve and we would have learned.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, are there any other additional questions you'd like to ask?
Chair, my question was not answered. On when should we see both by Minister or the HOD around the issue of a future clean audit, if any, and on the assertion by the AG about leadership failing its responsibility to do oversight. So I'm still waiting for that response from the Minister and the HOD.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Just to add on that, before I give to Honorable America, see HOD and the Minister, most of the two department we have seen, it's clean audit. Of course, that's quite commendable and it's quite exciting to always have a clean audit. Now, of course, the department had the history of having clean audit, but now it's like 2 or 3 years in a row without having that. So it will be good to have an indication from the Minister as well as to the HOD as to a direct answer to that question as to really when can we have, are there plans in place towards actually improving the audit? Most of the time, we are always commending departments for having clean audit. And then this is one of the departments that doesn't have that clean audit. And of course, it does not augur well with us, and especially with me in particular. So some kind of a direct question, I know it might be an uncomfortable question, but a direct answer might actually be very helpful to us as members sitting here. The other thing is that, just to add also on some of my question again, before I give Honorable America, it might be good to have your reaction, Minister and the HOD, as on one of the issues that was raised, the department, one of the findings that was that the submission of the financial statement was late. Now, it was late at some point. I think when I asked, it will be good to have an indication as to why it was late. What were these problematic issues that made the department not to be able to submit on time? The time frame at some point was given as 5 o'clock, but then when the 5 o'clock was not met, it was referred to 7 o'clock, and eventually it was submitted at before 11 o'clock in the evening. So of course it might look trivial, but especially being the Department of Education as well, one of the things we were even taught at school is that it's not the right thing to be late at school. I know of many people who are involved in procurement processes that some of their requests were thrown out of the process because they were late. So to comply a time frame, lateness as a compliance is obviously regarded as very serious thing in auditing. So it might be good also that if you can get a response as to what were these, there might be valid reasons. Would like to hear them. Thank you very much. Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me, Chair. My question is, I don't know whether, and I perhaps, it's ambitious of me to expect a clear answer on this particular question that I'm going to pose. In terms of, and the minister alluded to it in her introductory remarks, is that, the Age's office spending 8 months with the department. Have we, to a certain degree, establish a ballpark figure in terms of what it costs the department to comply with all these regulatory requirements, if they have done such a costing, the cost of compliance. And secondly, Chair, on page 271, in relation to irregular expenditure, there's certainly an explanation of and irregular expenditure were itemized, but the previous irregular expenditure, there's no clarity whether any of those amounts have been condoned, or because it was added to the financial year under review. It's added to it because it is no sort of clarity in terms of what happened to 2019 and 2020's irregular expenditure of over 3 million rand. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable America. Minister, HOD.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Between the CFO and myself, we'll try to answer some of these questions. Let me first deal with the question of a clean audit, and that you want us to commit that we will say by the state we will have a clean audit. The only commitment I can give to you is that we will strive towards making sure that we have a clean audit. I did try and answer you to sort of, because this question was asked in another way. I did try to say what are the things we actually trying to do to make sure that we can achieve such a clean audit. So this would be, for example, a responsiveness to the many agencies that actually have given us reports, and in a follow-up of that, which is a culture that we have started inside the department to make sure that we actually just follow through. The one point that I do want to mention, Chairperson, is that I think in my opening remarks, I spoke about the size of the system, the volume of the system, the fact that we're an operational department, that we actually have to execute a business. Obviously, we have to do that in a way which is within the rules and within all the rules that many a time, which is the rules we have written ourselves, which is the AG tests us on. So I think basically when you start talking about the cost, what is the cost of clean audits and so on, it may be that we have to pull back on some operations in order to give attention to the reporting requirements that they are, but it's more about orientation that we put inside the department, and therefore I give the assurance as the accounting officer for this department. That orientation is certainly being driven by myself, by the MEC, by the CFO and others, your management team, to make sure that does happen. Having said that, though, Chair, we know also that as we go through the audits each year, there are new methods which arise, which have not been there in the previous year, and which we cannot foresee at this time. As I said here, I cannot say what these new methods will be, and then we have to deal with them at that time. And some of these, for example, in this year, I believe we got their findings on local content, Yeah, it's emerging as local content as to what that is. We know now there's the issue of cement. What does that mean? So it's quite a hard question to answer, and the kind of commitment that you require, I think my answer is that there's an orientation and determination to strive towards this thing called clean audit. I want to make that point first. Second point I wish to make, Mr. Eli will talk to the submission of financial statements, but I do want to say, Chair, to apologize to the committee to say that those statements were received late, as indicated by the AG. It will not happen again. That is what I want to say as the accounting officer. Mr. Eli, I think you can perhaps just talk about some of the other issues that have arisen. Maybe you want to speak about the financial statements as well. Mr. Eli, thank you.
Yeah, Chairperson, just to say that I think we regret the issue around the late submission of financial statements. I think that we will in future, I think with the current environment, obviously the issue around physical visits placed a limitation on us. However, in terms of what the Chairperson has mentioned, I think we will endeavour to improve our communication with the AG in that regard, just to get a common understanding about how we will deal with the submission of the financial statements. So we will put corrective measures in place as indicated by the SG in terms of that commitment. I think for the 18 years that I've been in this department, this is the first time that we had late submission of financial statements. So that is understandably regrettable. It's not something that happens regularly. So we understand the seriousness around this matter. So what we've committed to do is to have a proper timetable that we will submit to our accounting officer with a project plan, with certain dates attached to that, and then also give the accounting officer a regular progress report around that to make sure that we meet the reporting requirements, because the date for the submission of the financial statement is the 31st of May, and that date hasn't changed for quite a number of years. And then again, as I said, we will have an agreed protocol in place before the time. I think just to say in mitigation, while we accept the responsibility, I think that in some of our cases, well, in this particular case, we had high tenants in that regard, why we couldn't get to the AG on time. The latest email we sent to the AG was 3 minutes past 12 that evening, and they couldn't find any proof on their side to say that they received it before 12 o'clock. Which is obviously regrettable, but again, there are limitations in terms of our IT system. During that particular period, the CEO indicated to us that in provincial government there are IT challenges during that particular period. However, we accept responsibility for the late submission, and therefore our commitment to make sure that the AG to receive the financials before the particular due date, and that we can comply with that. Then, as far as the members' question around irregular expenses concerned, just to say that, as you know, we take irregular expenditure issues very seriously. So the particular aspect of it that we find out that we have internal control unit. So what we do on a regular basis, they take samples of our payment balances that we do, and then they inspect that to see if we comply with all the relevant prescripts in that regard. They extract that and then they forward that to our what we call a loss control in Directorate of Financial Accounting, and they do a further investigation around that as well, just to make sure that we deal with the issues properly and no information is missing or additional documentation as is required has been found. And that process we go through in that regard. That then comes into this irregular expenditure register, and we disclose it in the financial statements in terms of transparency there as well. Those particular cases gets referred to Provincial Treasury for condemnation. However, Provincial Treasury, to my mind, has what they call a condemnation committee, and then they have some requirements that we have to comply with. We have submitted some of our cases to them, quite a few of them, percentage-wise, but there was reply from them that there are certain additional requirements that they want from us. So those things it's an ongoing basis with Provincial Treasury around the condemnation process as well. I just want to leave it there, Chair, because again, those are two parts involved, ourselves and Provincial Treasury, and we have to meet their requirements in terms of making sure that that process gets completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, CFO. Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Chairperson. Just the two issues that were directed at me specifically. The one has been answered very adequately by my HOD. Obviously, we can't say for sure that when we're going to get a clean audit is not within our sole control. Very much not. The AG does often come with additional requirements, and it seems to be quite commonly accepted that as soon as you start doing well, then they look to try and move you up another level. So we will obviously commit ourselves to doing absolutely everything we can to get a clean audit, but the most important thing is the unqualified audit, which indicates we have not wasted money or stolen money. And we'll certainly work towards a clean audit as much as possible. But I also would like to thank Honourable America for his comments, for having picked up what I said initially. I really do think we need to have a broader discussion about the objectives of audits. Obviously, none of us want to waste and steal money. We need to make sure it's being used efficiently and effectively. But it does appear that an inordinate amount of time and money is being spent every year on compliance issues rather than on service delivery issues. And I think it does at some point have a negative impact on our service delivery. So that's my answer to that question. The other one was on the issue of leadership oversight. Yes, it does concern me that leadership of the department was deemed not to have adequate oversight by the AG. And I certainly am happy with my HOD's response on this matter. I believe that he is putting many more measures in place now to try and ensure that this does not happen again. And I think that is all. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think you've raised this quite a number of times where you said you seem to be fairly satisfied and happy with an unqualified audit. You mean a clean audit is an overachievement?
Never an overachievement, Chairperson. Obviously, we would like a clean audit, but as you are aware, I think we're the only country in the whole world that has a clean audit as a qualification, as a category of audits. And we will certainly always continue to try and ensure that we achieve such. So it's not an overachievement, but I am happy in the sense of we have not wasted or stolen money, which I think is the most important thing, and still managed to deliver a quality service. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Minister, because the reason I wanted some comment on you from that time, because I know it's not the first time we are making that statement around the clean audit. But obviously, we always would like to celebrate a clean audit. I think it's been the norm every time whenever the departments are here. We always encourage them to actually have a clean audit. So when we don't have it, we will always have kind of questions or uncomfortable questions that we are actually asking. I see Honorable Nkondlo's hand is up.
No, Chair, I think an interesting response from Minister, and I think Minister would be aware that I think in the public domain, that has been indeed the discussion of striking the balance between a financial performance and the impact results. And hopefully through that standing committee, Chair, that would see in this financial year more rigorous debates around this. And I don't think it is about an either or, but I think it's learning from a department like this one that is more a service interfacing type of a department, so that we understand better these kind of challenges that would actually constrain such a department to actually reach what we call a peak in a clean audit in terms of some of these PDOs, internal controls, so that I think we sort of become real to our citizens' expectation, our service delivery commitments as a state to our citizens. So I'm just saying it's an interesting response at this point, Chair, that I would love to listen to this department and maybe through the minister in the House, about their particular argument, which I don't think it takes away from those that are gearing or are reaching clean audits. But I think it creates the balance that is required, whether reaching both is actually an illusion or there is indeed a possibility to actually have both of them, or if you have one, you don't necessarily have the other. So it's those different scenarios. And I'm just listening to the minister as she speak with an open mind so that I can be better educated based on the experiences of her department in this regard. Thank you very much. Because I'm sure ours is not to even insinuate by not having a clean audit that the department has eaten money. I think ours is to say whether there is value for that money. It's not about whether it's eaten, because sometimes it is not eaten, but the value that was derived is not necessarily there. So I think thank you for that response, and hopefully as COPA in the next financial year, we would be endowed, I think, as we do our oversight over this department and others. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Honorable Said hand is up.
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, just to pick up on what the Honorable Nkondlo said, you see, it must not be a either-or approach, you know, and I think I know that the statement that the MEC made saying that no matter how hard we work to get things right, the AG changes standards. Perhaps I want to then propose that, Chair, you must maybe convene a session between WCD and the Auditor General inside of SCOPA, so that we can then get a sense of this issue of standards, you know. Because I don't think it's to cast aspersions that the department have stolen or anything like that. I think, as Member Nkondlo said, to see that there is value for money. And I get the point. I think it's also good. Sometimes there is this fixation out there on no clean audits, clean audits. We've seen that, where people want to base clean audits purely that's the standard. Yes, but that's a contributing factor. That's a standard that we ought to look at. But I think maybe we should be possibly having a conversation between this committee, the department, and the Auditor General going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Said. I see Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I'm sorry, I just in another meeting. I joined a bit later. I think from what Member Said is saying, I think we, as a SCOPA, we engaged with the Auditor General in depth to look at the audit outcomes. What I think we have to do is to, on a yearly basis, before auditing happens, we need to sit down with the Auditor General so that we can check if the status quo remains for the past financial year, or there are other level ups or level downs that they are implementing within the different departments. Because like as I'm listening from the department side, if there's going to be the other issues that the Auditor General wants to audit the departments, and they have to sit down to explain what do they mean, because all the time it's a matter of the interpretation. Sometimes it's going to be difficult even for us as we do the oversight, rather than if we are taken in as the Auditor General before it goes before we start with the annual reports, that we have an understanding, then it becomes easier for us to do the oversight, to interpret, to interrogate the annual reports with the different departments based on the information that we already received from the Auditor General as they were doing auditing. So more is engagement with the Auditor General rather than calling the departments, while we have had engagement of trying to understand the audit outcomes of what is that based on. But it differs year by year. That is why that is important to me, that we do that on the annual basis. Thank you, Chair.
I see Honorable Said want to come back.
Chair, I hear the point raised by Honorable Maseko that we must engage with the that we must engage with the Auditor General. I understand that, and that's fine. But I think it's
Honorable Said.
it's important.
Can I request that?
Yeah.
Can I request that we keep that for resolution? Let's debate that at resolution.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
I know it's quite an interesting debate, maybe even an academic debate that has been raised, but it will be interesting also, man, while we are here, while we have the AG here, because I know there's different types of audit that the Auditor General expect at the end of the day. It can either, of which the highest we regard as the clean audit. But obviously now, of course, there is a new debate now. It seems to be a different view. It will be interesting to hear what is the AG's point on this, of clean audit versus unqualified audit. AG, do you want to respond?
Chairperson, yes, thank you for that question. If I understand the question correctly, is just the differentiation between the impact on the department, basically between the two audit outcomes. And yes, Chairperson, a clean audit outcome means versus an unqualified audit outcome, as far as your financial statements are concerned, means exactly the same thing. It means that there's no material misstatements in your financial statements that have been presented to the auditors for auditing and which we are signing off on. However, the difference now between the clean audit outcome and the unqualified audit outcome with findings is that in the other two areas that we also interrogate in our audit process, which is the audit of predetermined objectives as well as the audit of compliance with laws and regulations, that in those two areas we detected instances where there was material non-compliance or material findings, and we raised those in the audit report. So technically, as far as the financial statement is concerned, definitely no differentiation between the two, but the unqualified with findings touches on the other two areas that we've also subjected to audit. With the clean audit outcome, we would have also subjected those to audit, but we would not have raised any material findings on those.
Thank you very much, AG. Now, honorable members, are there any further questions that you'd like to ask? In the absence of further questions, honorable members, can I ask, may I ask Mr. Davids to check whether are there any members of the public that are present and that have indicated that they would like to ask questions on the annual report in terms so far as Section C and Section E are concerned of the Department of Education?
Good afternoon, Chairperson, members. I haven't identified any members of the public that's currently in our meeting, Chairperson. And so far, no one has contacted me to sit in the meeting to engage the committee and the department on Section C or E of the annual report.
No, excellent. Then, Mr. Davids, if there are no questions or comments from members of the public, or there are no members of the public in attendance. Now, honorable members, in the absence of further question, I just want to check whether are there any remarks maybe that the minister would like to make in us trying to round up the meeting. I see before I do that, I will ask Honorable America, because his hands are up.
No, Chair. I think that, thank you, Chair. I think that it would be remiss of us to, applaud the department. It's one of the big departments in our parliament for their performance. It was a very difficult year. We were thrusted into an environment that none of us were familiar with, and to get an unqualified audit with a singular PDO is laudable in the context of the magnitude of the department and the reach that it has to, and the footprint it has in the Western Cape. I think that we may wish to have this aspiration of the clean audit, but certainly the department has done remarkably well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable America. I'm not laughing at you. You know, these emojis of clapping hands. I see Honorable Maseko, you know, is clapping hands. So I'm sure if we were in the gallery or we were in the chambers, you could have seen her clapping hands for you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, thank you, Honourable America. I do agree with you, and thank you for those words. It is a huge achievement, and obviously we will continue to aim for a clean audit. But I must also remember we are the only education department in the country that ever has had a clean audit in South African democracy. So let's also bear that in mind. But thank you for the engagement with the committee members. I do think there is merit in having some further discussions as to how we can be effective, efficient, as well as accountable. Not completely focused on compliance, to the extent that it actually does affect service delivery negatively. But obviously there are also issues we need to pay attention to, and we will be doing that. As you've heard from the SG, I'm not happy either if you have a repeat finding. I don't think that's in order at all. And we will certainly be working very hard to ensure that that doesn't happen again next year. So thank you very much to you and to the members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. HOD.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members. I think we've listened intently to the meeting, the spirit of the conversation. Clearly from our side, I think it's a commitment from the management to make sure that we can strive to be better, to improve on the findings that we have had this year, to make sure that we don't get repeat findings, but you have a commitment from the management team, Chairperson. That what we will do is move to an orientation where accountability is at the forefront of our minds. And when you have to balance that against the operational environment, as has been discussed, it's essentially just probably going to be a way of working, and hopefully next year when we are here, we can sit in front of this committee and can then give and say that we have achieved a clean audit. But I do want to thank the members of the committee. I want to thank the AG for the spirit of the engagement, Chairperson, in the department. I think it has been mature. We've differed on some things, but eventually we agreed that, okay, that is the finding, and hence we got the report. I also do want to thank the audit committee of the department for just making sure that, we get the quarterly reports in and making sure that we are doing all those. I want to thank all the members in SCOPA for the oversight that has been done, and then thank you to the Minister for leadership and to my colleagues for all the work that they have done. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, HOD. Chairperson of the Audit Committee, is there any thing you would like to say?
No, nothing further from me, Chair. We will continue to assist the department as they strive to get back that clean audit status. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. AG?
Thank you, Chairperson. I think firstly, we do welcome an engagement via the SCOPA with the department on our audit objectives or annual audit objectives and what we try and achieve through that. So yeah, thank you very much from our side, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, AG. Thank you very much, Audit Committee. Thank you very much, HOD with your department, and thank you very much, Honorable Minister, as the executive authority in that department. It's been a very interesting discussion and also a very interesting debate. I think we have made it as a norm in the committee that we always expect our department to actually achieve a clean audit. But obviously, it does not mean that when the audit is not clean, we are not going to engage with the department. However, it's also encouraging that when we ask the question about the achievement of the clean audit, the department, although they did not give commitment, it was encouraging and inspiring from the HOD to indicate that he will strive towards clean audit, because that's basically what we would like to have. And part of the reason you'll find that when we are actually, most of the departments we have seen with clean audit, it does not even take us long to have discussions with them, because some of the things are straightforward. So when sometimes the audit is otherwise, we'll definitely try to engage the department. Obviously, I take what the minister has raised regarding the issue of clean audit versus unqualified audit. It's of course, we are in the process also going to learn quite a lot of things on how to do actually things moving forward, and not forgetting that accountability is the cornerstone of good governance. So thank you very much for having availed yourself, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much to the department as well, and thank you very much to the audit committee and the Auditor General as well as our dependent ally in the quest of good governance. Thank you very much. If we'd like then to excuse you, and so that we can continue with the business of the committee, if the members of the provincial legislatures can remain behind, so that we can finalize business of the committee.
Thank you, Chairperson and members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Davids, for indicating that almost everybody is out what's supposed to be out. Honorable members, are there any indication or suggestion of what resolution we would like to take regarding the department? And obviously, I'm sure since we've started, I think it's the first department that we have come across that is having an unqualified audit. And I must say the commitment from the HOD as the accounting office, it's quite encouraging that he will strive towards clean audit, and bearing in mind that it was actually a recurring finding. Are there any proposal for resolution, honorable members? Honorable Ngondo, Honorable Botha, in that order. In that order, honorable members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My apologies with my voice, Chair. I just came back from a minor procedure, so that is why my voice is not fully healed, I would say. So my apologies if I may be struggling as a person who is generally allowed. Chair, the first one, I would like, I think the report that the HOD said they can share on page 152 under 7.2 regarding the issues that are contained in what must be monitored in terms of the internal control. And I would rather, Chair, that the two issues on the internal control and PDOs, that as what would have done in previous SCOPA, where similar issues, we request that this department provides SCOPA actually monthly reports on how they are improving, so that we can assist as SCOPA in as far as ensuring that the kind of leadership failures in as far as getting thumbs on the pulse on these matters are not lost. So I think that's the first proposal that I would like to make in this regard. The second one, Chair, perhaps I'm going to commit to write because I think the quality of the sound in the questions that I've raised, I think on 238 and 239, on some of the steep increases, I think on some of the budget items, I could not pick up properly. So if either the coordinator cannot provide me, I'm not sure whether we do have the recording. If that is there, I can ask for it, or I can further ask those questions. I can be guided on that because I still need to hear exactly the responses properly on those, including the matter that is still on dispute on the salary for those independent schools, because the matter, it is said, it's still not resolved. Perhaps the department can then provide us an update when the matter has indeed been resolved. But I think, Chair, my last two issues is that I would like, I'm not sure how maybe members can provide an advice on how do we take up this discussion that the minister has raised around the issue of the clean audit and, you know, an unqualified audit at a SCOPA level. And that's why I'm saying I'm open because there was a proposal from Member Syed and there was one from Member Maseko. But I think we just need to find a way, because I think these are issues we place on